Hello everyone, welcome back to AB-Aquariums. In today's video I'm just going to do a little bit of a step-by-step from start to finish about how to set up a fish tank or aquarium for beginners that you've never set one up before. You just want to know how to do it, what order to do it in, and what you'll need to do it. So what I've got here is I've got quite a small tank. It's 20 litres or 5 US gallons. So it's just over, well, it's about a foot wide by just over a foot tall. By the width will be 8 inches, so it's about 5 US gallons or 20 litres. So yeah, a fairly small tank, but you can keep some fairly small inhabitants in there, like some snails, some shrimp. Freshwater shrimp will do quite well in there. Maybe a better fish, a Siamese fighting fish that you'll quite often see in your local fish shops. And maybe even some like dwarf schooling fish like Chili rasbora. They work quite well, and the amount of colour they've got, especially against a dark background and some plants, they just really, the red in them really pops. Anyway, so what we're going to need, we're going to need some substrate. I tend to use play sand. I've literally just got some standard play sand you can get from most DIY stores, garden centres, places like that. Just play sand, so it's fish safe. It's a quartz based sand, silica based sand, so it's completely safe in fresh water to use. You might need a dog to give you some feedback, depending how interested they are. And then some hardscape. Definitely want some hardscape. I've got a few bits of wood and some sort of rounded stones and some live plants, just things I've taken out of another tank, but you can pick these up at your local fish shop for next to nothing in the hardscape section. And obviously the plants, they'll keep little pots of plants and things like that you can look at. They'll tell you how easy they are to look after and what sort of care they'll need. Some dechlorinator. I'm currently using this one here, Aqua Design Safe. But you can use any dechlorinator, any sort of anything that gets rid of the heavy metals and chloramines in the water. Basically just neutralizes everything to make it safe for fish. Some water obviously when you're ready to fill up, and a filter. In this case it's really overkill, but it's what I've got spare. A hang on the back filter, it's just a cheap one you can get off any sort of website, or any fish shop will do these. You hang on the back filters. This is a cheap and cheerful one, and I tend to use an intake sponge on the intake of it, just so that any sort of small shrimp or snails don't get sucked up into the pump, because nobody wants that. But yeah, I'm going to be using a hang on the back filter this time, just for they're easy to maintain, they're easy to look after, easy to set up. I've just got some sponges in there, and the dreaded duckweed did find its way into this one, so I wouldn't recommend getting duckweed unless you really want the plant that will absorb all the nutrition out of the water and grow rapidly and hard to get rid of. But in a small tank like this, it's not going to do much harm, and it's easy to control. But yeah, that's all we're going to need. So first things first, let's get some substrate in there, let's get some sand in there. So like I say, I'm just going to use play sand. I'm not using any root tabs or any sort of soils or anything like that in this case. I'm literally just going to use inert sand. So I've got a little camping saucepan to put it in with, because why not? It's just easy. And we're going to get maybe an inch layer in there. Half an inch to an inch is fine. You can add more or less depending on how thick you want the sand bed. But I tend to slope it towards the back, just so there's a better depth of field in the tank. So you get in that, the tank looks deeper than it actually is. So there you go. Just sort of spread it about your hands. Spread the sand about. Make it fairly level, but slope it up towards the back like that. Just so when you look in the front of the tank, you can see that it kind of looks like the tank goes on for further than it actually does. Just adds, it's just a bit more pleasing to the eye. So there we go. Simple so far, literally just a bit of play sand, a substrate. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add pieces of wood. So I've literally just got, like I said, these have come out of the tank, so they're already waterlogged. You might have to glue these with some super glue gel or something similar to a stone, just to make them sink. Or you can, if they're small enough pieces, you can always try boiling them in a saucepan, which will get rid of some of the tannins at the same time, because they do leach a little bit of brown tannins when they're pretty new to the aquarium. So yeah, I'm putting the wood first. I've got another piece. It's literally just a spindly bit, a twiggy bit, and I'm going to put that in with it. Yeah, looks all right so far. I've also got a little coconut hut, and this is just a little hide, just so if the fish or shrimp or snails got somewhere to hide, get out of the light, whatever they want to do. So I'm going to put that in there as well. And you can face that towards you just so you can see if there's anything in there. You know, you don't need to use the coconut hut. You can make a hide out of rocks or wood sort of laying on top of each other, anything you want to do. And I've got a few rocks here. You might have to move things around. You might not be happy with the initial layout, which to be fair, I'm probably going to have to move a few things around because I've probably not got a lot of room for what I've got planned. I've got that one rock there in the front. Larger piece in the back, sort of taller rounded stone at the back, and I've got one more piece because it's only a small tank, so I don't really need much. I'm going to put that at the back there, if I can squeeze it in there. So there we go, nothing too crazy. It's not a very big tank, so I've not got much hardscape, so I'm just going to go for that for now. I've also got a few live plants, which I think you can't go too far wrong with some live plants. So I've got some Java fern here, they've been growing in another tank, and they're epiphytes, so you don't want to bury the rhizome. The rhizome is this little piece here, which is what the leaves grow out from. They look a little bit like a twig type thing. The roots come out of the rhizome, but you don't want to bury that because it won't do your plant much good, and they can rot, and the plant will rot away. So yeah, don't bury the rhizome. But I'm going to put some Java fern in there. Just going to cram it in between the wood. You can also glue this. You can glue it, and you can use cotton thread. You can use whatever you want to use, just to get it sort of wedged into the hardscape. And like I say, don't bury the rhizomes. You don't really want to be doing that because they can rot away. So yeah, there's the Java fern. I've also got some stem plants here. But what I'll do is I'll fill the tank up next because it's a little bit easy to plant the stem plants. You've probably seen other videos like this before where they tend to fill the tank first and they put the stem plants in sort of last, just because they stand up a bit easier rather than them all drooping over the hardscape and being hard to exactly see where they're going to sit. So yeah, I'll fill the tank up next. I tend to use a watering can. And what you want to do is just sort of put it on the hardscape so the sand doesn't go everywhere. You're going to get a little bit of a mess, but you can always mess around with your fingers and just make sure that it's all laid back where you want it. But yeah, this is only a 20 litre tank, so it doesn't actually take much water. I've already dechlorinated it, so you basically just add whatever the instructions recommend to add, you know, whether it's 1 or 2 mil per 10 gallons, or it might be something, depending on how concentrated your dechlorinator is. But yeah, I've already added that, so that's alright. Not pour the water in over the hardscape, it's not going to send the sand everywhere. It's a little bit's going everywhere, but it's, you know, you're going to get a bit of that. Fill the tank up slowly and steady, no massive rush. I can already see pieces of duckweed have started to float to the surface, but on a small tank like this, it'll be easy enough to manage because it would just be just a case of getting a small net and netting out the duckweed. But it's great for sucking up the nitrates and any excess nutrients in the tank. Duckweed grows so fast. If you did have if you were feeding a little bit heavy, the duckweed will grow to that and it will just absorb any excess nutrients. So there's some of the water, and I've got a little bit in this bucket as well, which might come out a little bit quicker, so I hope it's not making a massive mess. As you can see, it's a little bit cloudy, but that's just where this sand has been in a previous tank before, so it might have a little bit of detritus in there and it might be a little bit cloudy. But if you're using brand new sand, I'd recommend rinsing out in a bucket and just rinsing the hose through the sand in a bucket until it sort of starts to run clear. You can actually pour the sandy, dirty water out and just keep running the hose through it until it eventually runs a bit clearer. But it might take a while, but it's up to you how clean you want your sand. The filter will eventually pull it out. So there we go, we've got it filled with water. If you can roughly see what's going on in there, it's hard to make out. I mean, to be fair, it's gone pretty cloudy, but we won't worry about that too much. So yeah, I'm using some hydrophila. It's very fast growing, just green type. It will go a little bit more coppery colour at the top as it gets near the light, so that looks quite nice. But yeah, it's just a really fast growing stem plant, and the cuttings are a little bit scraggly because I've had them growing in other tanks and I've just snipped them off for cutting. So yeah, put them in the background. I tend to use them in the background just because it's a little bit easy to see what you're going to have running up, because they grow quite tall. It's always good to have them near the back. But yeah, use your fingers, use some tweezers, whatever you got. I'd use my hands. They will mostly pull nutrients from the water column. You can use a nutrient substrate like the soils or something like that, and they will pull a little bit of nutrition out the substrate, but to be fair, stem plants pull most of what they need out of the water column. So if you're feeding heavy, that will probably sustain the stem plants, but you can always add liquid fertilizers in the future if they feel like they look like the leaves are going a little bit yellow, they're lacking nitrates, you're not feeding very heavy. You can always add some nutrition in terms of like liquid fertilizers. But yeah, add the stem plants in the back. I'm not going to be able to get all of the ones I've chosen for this tank because there's just not a lot of room back there. But I'll squeeze in what I can. It's probably not going to be the easiest thing to plant with your fingers because there really isn't much room. But yeah, maybe one more on the left, one more little clump. If I can squeeze my hand down there. There we go. That's nice and cold. Whew. Right, so that's all the plants I'm going to use for now. You can always add to this. You can use some reds. You know, you can get red stem plants. You can use anything you want to use. But in this case, I'm just going to use some Java fern in the front, and then I'm going to use some stem plants in the back. But for this part of the video, I was going to basically talk about filtration because I was going to see if we could clear the water up a little bit more. And I'm just going to use the hang on the back one I was on about before. So it's just, this is way overkill for a tank like this. It's far too big, but there's no reason why you can't use a bigger filter on a smaller tank. It's just going to be a little bit overkill. So yeah, as you can see there, I've got that hanging on the back of the tank. It's nice and simple. And before you plug this in, you want to pour some water in the back of the. I mean, if it's one of those ones where the pump is outside the tank, you need to fill the box in the back of the filter first. So you don't want to be letting that run dry. Add some water to the hang on the back filter. Just get it so it's sort of level with the spillway, like the bit where the waterfall starts to come out the back of out the front of the filter there. Just add water to that point, and it will just help the pump prime up and start pulling water from the tank rather than running dry. So just fill it up a little bit more. See it start to tickle over the top of the spillway there. Make sure the little pump's not leaking because you don't need that. And there we go. Plug it in. Try to knock over the watering can. So you can hear it's a little bit noisy at the minute, just while it's sort of priming and sucking the water through. And it starts to quieten down as it pulls the water through. But initially it might be a little bit noisy just while it's got a little bit of air in it. I sometimes leave the lid off because I don't know if you can hear that, but it's quite noisy with the lid on. So I'll leave that off. You can sometimes put little bits of foam around the edges just to take the vibration out of the between the lid and the housing of the filter itself. But we'll leave it off for now. But yeah, that is literally, I mean, I don't know how long, I mean, we've literally been running for 13 minutes and we've already got an aquarium set up. Right, so now we've got the tank all set up, ready to go. Everything's running, the filter's running, all the plants are planted and they're going to start to grow. We're going to leave the tank be for a good few days now. Just leave it empty, let it do its thing for, I'd say, up to a week. And what you can do then, the following weekend, maybe go into your fish shop and just see whether they've got any bladder snails or ram's horn snails. I prefer the ram's horn snails, they're a little bit better looking. They come in pinks and blues and spotted varieties and they're just nicer to look at. And I'd get a nice little group of them, add them to the tank so you've got some life in the tank. And they'll start to feed on all the biofilms and the little bits of algae that start to form, and you get a little bit of algae in the sand. They'll start to eat that, and at least you have a little bit of life in the tank to look at over the next coming weeks. I'll give it another week or two after that, and then you can maybe start to add a few shrimp. You know, maybe you're week 3 in. And you know, you had the snails in there for a little while. You could maybe look at adding some live freshwater shrimp. I would also get a test kit while you're there, just to make sure you've got no ammonia, no nitrite. And before you add the shrimp, just make sure that the ammonia and nitrite is at 0, and there may be a little bit of nitrate showing just where you've had a little bit of dieback of plants and they've converted over into the nitrates. But yeah, I wouldn't add any shrimp just until you've tested the water that after 3 weeks or so, you've not had any fish in there, you've not had anything that's going to produce much waste apart from any leaves that are dying back and maybe a little bit from the wood, you should be good to go after 3 weeks or so. Just make sure that, you know, like I say, there's no ammonia in there, no nitrite, and then you can go into the shop and maybe have a look at adding some live shrimp. That's if you're not going down the betta or Siamese fighting fish route, because they may predate on the shrimp. But if you're just going to go down the nano fish, the chili ras borer, or, you know, tiny little nano fish like that, maybe you're going to do a shrimp only tank, shrimp and snails, you know, by all means add a few cherry shrimp to the mix maybe 3 weeks in, and you've watched it grow, the plants have started to grow, everything's becoming established, you've got your own little ecosystem set up now, you know. Everything's going to start growing in and doing really well. You're going to have great success. So yeah, I wish you all the best on your journey, and let me know in the comments if you think I've missed anything, or anything you might add to help the beginners out that have watched this video. But yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Take care.